When I was younger, I thought having 8 kids would be having a house full of a bunch of mini-me's. But it turns out I learned a few lessons that really changed me more than I even imagined. You see, this all started in the conversation I had with my wife before she was wife when I asked her the question of how many kids you wanted. She took a moment, paused, and didn't seem to want to answer that. So I just jumped in. I said, I want a big family. I'd like 8 kids. Was then I saw in her eyes she kind of had a look of relief, and she admitted to me that she wanted a big family too, which was perfect. You see, I've always loved to be around kids. They just have this way of finding joy in the smallest of things, and being around them just made my life feel lighter. And so naturally, I want to have that in my home. I imagine everybody just pitching in and doing yard work together, getting chores done around the house. We can go on hikes together, we can go biking together, stay up late watching movies, and we did have lots of times like that, and it was a blast. But raising 8 kids was nothing like I imagined. See, each kid was different. They had their own personalities, their own interests, their own challenges, and shocker, they did not love the same things that I love. And in raising them, I realized that they've kind of raised me too. Yeah, that's kind of cliche, but no, it's true. I've learned a few lessons that have really changed my life forever. And the first one is probably the most obvious one, which is patience. But when I say patience, I don't mean the small stuff. I don't mean the waiting 20 minutes for your kids to put their shoes on, or the constant questions you get on road trips. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Or even those late nights when you're putting kids to bed and one of them says, hey dad, I've got a project at school that I've got to do, and I've got to do this presentation on this trifold poster board and all this, and you spend up all night putting that together with them. That kind of patience I felt like I already had. The patience I'm talking about is that you get from watching your kids go through life's lessons. When you know who your kids are or who they can become, and letting them experience that for themselves, letting them make mistakes, letting them go through the hard times. When a lot of times you're like, if you would just listen to me and do what I say, you can avoid all those things. But over the years, I've learned that I'm not here to control my kids. I'm here to just guide them. And in guiding them, sometimes it means just to support them. Let them make their mistakes. Let them figure things out the hard way. And I found that sometimes those moments that are hard and difficult, when they get through it, you often go back on and laugh at it together. Some examples that pop in my head are the teenage years. Those years have been challenging for all my kids. It's a time when they're going through lots of changes and just trying to figure out who they are. And in seeing my older kids go through that time and seeing who they are on the other side of it and how strong and independent that they become, gives me a lot of patience for when my other children, the younger ones, reach that same age and go through that same period in their life. And sometimes you see little moments of that patience start to pay off. There was one evening when we were sitting down at dinner and one of my younger teens had out his phone, and my wife reminded him, put your phone away, we don't have the phone at dinner, and I had to do it several times. Well, he finally put his phone away with a little grumpy attitude, of course, and we tried to involve him in the conversation, asked him a few questions. That's when he gave some kind of snarky remark and got up and left the table. I looked over at my wife, said, give him a minute, let him cool down. It was only a few seconds later when one of my older teenagers stood up and left the room, and he was like, I've got this. It was only a few minutes that they were gone, but they came back, and the younger teenager looked at my wife and apologized and sat down, and we had a good dinner together. Now, I don't know exactly what was said in that conversation, but it reminds me that the patience that we invest in our kids during those teen years really does pay off in the end, and it shows in how they treat each other in the future. Which kind of leads me to my next thought, is that I did not expect to change as much as I did. Growing up as a kid, I was the adventurous type. I loved sports, I loved being outdoors, I loved to just get my heart racing. One of the trips that we would do as a family is that we would go snow skiing. Now, I was the youngest of 4 brothers, and I would always follow them as they did the trails, and they would find shortcuts through trees to find the best jumps, and we would try and get the most air, and we just had a blast together. And I remember one time as we were doing these paths and trying to find good jumps to do, I looked over, my dad was snow plowing kind of off in a distance, watching us and pulling his camera out and taking pictures once in a while. And I thought in my head, like, man, he must be so bored just going so slow and just watching us. So I thought I'd go help him. So I went over to him and I said, hey dad, let me hold the camera for you and you can go try these cool jumps that we found. It was then he looked at me and said, no son, I'm having a great time just watching you. I couldn't understand what he meant. How could he be having so much fun when he wasn't doing anything? And I realize now as a parent that my priorities did shift. They changed. In my early adult years, I remember going to different sporting events and watching from the stands and seeing the plays that were going on and just longing to be out there again and wanting to play again. I would reflect on my glory days when I was into sports and doing all those fun things. But as the years went on, I found myself thinking less and less about me and more about them on the field. I began to feel more of a rush when they would make that key play or they would score a goal. And I would think more about how I can help them to improve and help encourage them. My priorities changed from focus on me and helping my life to be more adventurous and happy to doing it with my family, to how I can help them to find this great adventure together. Raising my kids didn't just change me, but it changed my life. Now, I'm not saying that I can't find happiness by myself, but I am saying that when I'm with my family and we do things together, I find greater joy. I find things are just more enhanced. For example, jumping out of a plane was once a desire I had, but I kind of lost that as I grew older. And when my daughter turned 18, she came to me and she says, "Dad, I want to go skydiving." So we just did something insane, right, Ruthie?
Definitely did.
We just jumped out of a
airplane!
And we created an unforgettable memory. And that time we had together is something I'll never forget because I experienced it with my daughter. Now, keep in mind, we've had plenty of times when things did not go as planned, when the kids would whine or complain and just didn't work out as we're hoping. And those times kind of suck sometimes, and they're pretty hard. But you know what? You just learn from them. And next time you try to change things up and you try to do things different and you try to rally troops and do things together again. It's funny because even though there's that risk of things not going right and things being hard because you have all the kids there with you, I find that when I'm by myself sometimes, I do things or I see things and I'm like, oh, my kids would love that. Or my wife would get a huge kick out of that. And I find myself wanting to share it with my family and to be there with them. And I realize that it just enhances the experience when you've got those around you that you love. When I think back to that conversation I had with my wife so many years ago, when I told her I wanted 8 kids, I thought I knew what that meant. I thought it meant a house full of noise, of chaos, of fun, of adventure. And yeah, it does mean all those things. But what also means is that as your kids grow, you grow with them. And that's something I would not change for the world.